member?
I'm a green tea party.
Actually, no. That's my political leaning.
Your green tea party.
Any trade that interferes with my green tea, that's gonna be a problem.
Oh.
All right, ready?
Yeah.
Here we go. Ready?
China. Good thing. All right. Sorry.
Robert?
So I was like, good thing tea comes from Japan, not China. Well, black tea. Anyways, doesn't even matter. I can talk about tea.
Ready?
Always.
Let's do it.
3, 2, 1.
All right, so now we're gonna finish this conversation with talking about politics and feminism.
My favorite.
Oh yeah.
Actually, though.
So, what's your party affiliation? And yeah.
I don't know. I would consider myself a conservative, specifically probably like Republican, very much so Republican. I mean, I'll just say I voted for Trump in 2016, and I'm gonna vote for him again. And I know that's like a really hotbed issue with Christians right now because, like, even John Piper actually just came out with an article about like white, like about voting, and it wasn't specifically about voting, but it was about like politics and stuff like that. And then I listened to another guy who talked about like why we should vote. Anyways, this very like hotbed issue in Christianity, especially.
Mm-hmm.
I think, for me personally, I don't think it's a coincidence that Christians have traditionally been conservative.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you look at conservative values, like if you just Google really quick, like conservative values, one of the conservative values is Judeo-Christian morals. So I don't think that, like, I'm not going to hate my Christian brother or sister if they're voting Democrat. That's wrong. You know, it's wrong to like hate people because they're party affiliations, because politics is politics. Like, you know, it's, what is it really, you know, your identity is not in politics, as I keep saying, but it's important to like drill that issue because people make an idol of politics. And I think that, I think the God of our country, especially the God of our age, is like a lot of things, but the God of our country right now is politics. I think if you look at it, there's a lot of people, I'm just going to keep saying this country because I don't know about the rest of the world. I can only speak for like America or like what I've seen in America. Socially and like morally, we've become more liberal, like not in the political sense, but in the if secular is the better word for it. If secular is over here and God is over here, like they're very opposite.
Yeah.
And I think that, like if you say, oh, the founding of America, we were over here next to God, and we've slowly, maybe not slowly, like we've moved as a country like way far down here.
Yep.
And I say down because like it's, you know, obviously anywhere farther from God is down, but in a lot of ways. But yeah, I think the more secular our country gets, the more we are going to look for solutions outside of the Bible, obviously. Yeah. So anyways, I think that our country is, people are looking for answers, and because they've left God, they say God's not the answer. They say, okay, well, this politician is the answer. This politician is God. Yeah. Like the president is God. Like so a conservative value that I would hold to is like small or like limited government. Limited government because, for one, like we want to have the freedom I want to have the freedom to choose my religion. Mm-hmm. I want to have my religious right protected. Right. Like I want my rights protected. And those are, I think that, like the founders of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, like they founded it with the idea that those are God-given rights. Mm. And that's why I say it's not, I don't think it's a coincidence that, and I mean, people who are not conservative are gonna like hate me for saying that, but mm-hmm. I don't think it's a coincidence that most Christians are conservative. Mm-hmm. I don't hate I don't hate people who are Democrats or like super liberal, but it does give me pause with the way that the current Democratic Party is, mm-hmm. With huge issues like abortion and like the redefinition of marriage. And I can't think of other like specific ones, but for example, there has been some people at our school that I was kind of friends with, and I saw that they went to like a women's march, and you can say all you want about the women's march, but really it's a march about abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about like choosing because you want to be able to have abortion on demand. And like as a Christian, if you call yourself a Christian and you're going to those things that are blatantly promoting the murder and slaughter of babies, I don't know how that lines up with your Christian morals and your Christian values. Like, I don't know how that, I have a really hard time with that. Like, a really hard time with, like, saying, I'm going to vote these people in that have these policies that go against the Bible. It's kind of like the thing we talked about with BLM. I don't want to support them as a movement because I look at their website and they're not for like the traditional family structure or something like that, which is like, again, like you said, they're against a lot of like Christian values. So I have a hard time with, and I think that in the past it would be easier for Christians to call themselves Democrats or call themselves liberals because it wasn't so polarized. And like even in the past, Democrats, you can be a Democrat and be like and have conservative values, but because our country has become so polarized, and it didn't start with Trump.
No.
And it got worse under Obama, but it's been going, it's been progressively getting more polarized. And I think as Christians, though, you need to look at, in terms of voting, because we're going to vote, our elections next week, right? I think you need to look in terms of, like, does the policies that people are promoting line up with the Bible? And I'm not for theocracy either. I am for like separation of church and state because, again, what if I lived under a Hindu theocracy? I don't want that. Like I want freedom of. It's better to have more freedom than less freedom. And I don't want the government telling me what to do because the only person I listen to is God in like what to do with my life. And then so it's like God, government, and the God, government, family, like things like that, in terms of like authorities. And like the government is used by God for sure. Like it says that God moves I had them written down. Maybe I don't have. God has, he moves the king's heart. The king's heart is like streams of water, and God moves it whichever way he wants to. And then there's, 1 Peter 2 talks about the government being a ministering agent. And then actually Romans 13 talks about the government too, and it says that the government doesn't have a sword for nothing, and like we should respect the government. And Christians, of all people, should be the most respectful of the government and the most submissive to the government. / authority, exactly, because like God put those people in place. But then again, that gets to the question of, well, what about evil dictators? Or not evil dictators, well, I guess dictators, but in America, like, what about if you hate the president? Not my president. Like, what if you hate the president? Or even the conservatives under the Obama years, like, not liking him as a president. I was old enough to vote, but I still was like, I think that God is sovereign over everything. And again, it goes back to the verse that God puts those authorities in place, and he uses even the bad authorities to work his will. I mean, if we look at, this is not even answering like your question, but this is just explaining random stuff about politics and my opinions on it. If you look at, and again, these are not all, I learned these from my church, I learned these from my pastor, from like videos and like people in my life that I don't just like come up with these things. I learn them.
Must be nice. No.
But if you look at, so one of the arguments for, I don't know, voting a certain person over the other would be like they're morally repugnant. First of all, both of our choices this year are morally repugnant. Like you're not gonna have a perfect king.
Yeah.
That's one thing. But then you add the layer on top of that God is sovereign, and God is the one who appoints these people and allows them to be in power and uses them to work his will. Like it says, like again, that says like the God moves the king's heart like streams of water.
Yeah.
God will use bad kings. Like if we look at the history of Israel, not all their kings were good. Saul, like not a good king.
Yeah.
And the people, so there's an example of voting. So the people wanted Saul because he was tall, dark, and handsome, and was like stronger. I don't know, could like lead them in battle. But then little David, David was actually the king after God's own heart. But the people chose Saul, and it was a bad choice.
Yeah.
But God still worked His will through it. I'm trying to think. Even the kings of, if you look at Israel when they're exiled, and when they went back, I'm gonna get it wrong, but when they went back, my Old Testament professors gonna kill me. No, when they went back, I think it was, I want to say the Persian king, but it might not be the Persian king. Whoever was the king, who they were in exile, and then they let them go back into the lands. Like God used that foreign king to allow His people back into the lands.
Mm-hmm.
So, to sum it up, like God is sovereign over what happens in our country.
Yeah.
In good and bad, not in good and bad ways, but yes.
I like that you say that because I feel like a lot of people are voting or gonna vote based on the character or the character of the person or what they've said, and like words are cheap. Like you can say you're gonna do something and then not do it, right? I think Trump has said stuff and has not done it. I think Biden has said stuff and has not done it when he was vice president years before. They've both lied before. They've both said racist comments before. So it's obvious that they're both broken. They're both, I don't know if, I wouldn't be bold enough to say that neither of them are Christian, but.
I would be. Neither of them are Christians. It's obvious by the way that they live their lives.
Yeah, I mean,
it's obvious by the fruit of their life, which is none.
Yeah.
They don't have the fruits of the Holy Spirit. Like they're not Christians.
I mean, I respect that. I mean, I've analyzed and looked at both. I know that Biden isn't because I think he's Catholic, but Trump claims to be a Christian. But you have to kind of analyze that and look at, does he carry the fruits of the Spirit? Is he actually saved and stuff like that? But I won't go as far as be like, yeah, he's saved or not. Like, I don't know. But,
yeah,
I mean,
I don't think so. But
yeah,
just from whatever.
So,
but
again, I think a lot of people are going to vote based on character, and that's not the characteristic to vote on. Because if you do that, then you would vote for neither, right? You have to look at other things. And so you said policies, and that's huge. Like you should look at the policies that they're trying to carry on. But I also don't think that we should just look at abortion and same-sex marriage, because that
of course.
is just for Christianity, right? We also have to look at education, immigration. What are these presidents, what are these candidates saying that they're going to do? And are they really going to do it? Can they really do it? Most of the things that they say, they probably can't do it, because obviously there's 3 branches of government and they have to go through all that, right? All the stuff that they say they're going to do, there's probably committees and bills that get just shut down. But at the end of the day, whoever gets elected, we have to pray over them, and we have to be mindful that God's going to do His will regardless. I saw a video that Greg Laurie said, I just went over and I prayed for President Trump. He asked me to come and pray for him, and I would have done so if Obama, called me, but he didn't. And so, like, people are calling me out, like, why are you over there? He's this, he's that. He's like, what do you mean? I'm a Christian. I'm called to pray for our leaders, so I'm going to go and pray for them. Yeah. And I think whether you like him or not, he's our president right now, and so we should be praying for him. And if you have that kind of heart that, like, no, I'm not going to pray for him, or like, no, he's terrible. Yeah, you're right, but so are you. And so go and pray for him. Like, it just gets me so fired up when, like, you want to call out people's sin. Yeah, check yourself first.
Yeah, again, it's easy for Christians to fall into the polarizing nature that is our country so easily, because we're just bombarded with it every single day. Yeah. Like you watch one news source versus the other, and it's like you get a whole different perspective.
Yeah, because you watch CNN, you're gonna just see how they hate Trump. You watch Fox, you're gonna see how they like Trump. And so, one way that I would say to maybe figure out and maybe kind of discern on how to like pick a candidate, is look at both sides. Like you can't just look at one saying, okay, so he's going to do all this, he's going to do all that, so I'm just going to vote for this person because it benefits me, or I'm going to vote for this person because I like the way he talks. Like, no, like go and look at what they're actually saying. And I'll play a little bit of the devil's advocate here,
Please do.
and pretty much question some of the reasons why like people would say, because I've heard these, and I don't always agree with them, but why they won't vote for Trump or why they won't vote for Biden. And maybe you can answer for both of them, but we'll start with Trump. So some people will say he's a racist, and so you shouldn't vote for him because if he's a racist, like he's rich, he's white, and all he cares
He's
about
male.
is
Rich white male,
Male,
rich
tall,
white
superior. He says stuff about women. He says stuff about people of color. Why the heck should I vote for him?
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
I think that the racist card pulled on Trump comes from his like immigration policy
Mhm.
when he, well, probably still, but his comments on immigrants back when he first became president, and like with the wall and things like that. So I think it came from that. And they've just like perpetuated like the thought that Trump is racist. I mean, I haven't really like gone in. I wouldn't be able to answer like immigration questions because that hasn't really been like the biggest issue with the Trump administration and like this election. So I just haven't looked at it enough to like be able to give a good answer about it. But that's why they call him racist is because, but if you look at 5 years ago, before he was president, he wasn't labeled a racist.
Mm-hmm.
He was Trump. He was in rap songs. I mean, this is such a typical answer. He's in rap songs. He's in like, everyone loved Trump. He's just like, he was a celebrity.
Yeah.
And so I think that the race card is pulled on him because our politics has become about like moral character instead of what policies are objectively good for this country. They have to pull every card they can because they hate him.
Yeah.
You know, and like you can call it out when if and when he said bad things, but there's also the argument that, not even the argument, like the fact that he is like, he's done like prison reform recently, and like the Black unemployment rates went down, like they got better, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like the unemployment, but not even Black unemployment, like, well, all unemployment got better, but I think those are just like a few things. But I with the immigration stuff, he didn't build the cages. If that's like people's problem, he didn't build the cages. They were built in 2014 under the Obama administration.
Yeah.
And that was actually like, it was really interesting. I watched a Snapchat video with like fact checking the debates that happened last week, and I was not expecting this girl to like be a real fact checker. I was like, I know fact checking, and she said that was true when he was like, when were the cages built, Joe? And they were built under the Obama administration. So again, you can argue like what policy is good, but the reason they call him racist is because of those cages and like separation of children, their families. Like that's why they call him racist for the most part.
Yeah.
And then his like handling of some of the like race relation stuff that's happened recently. But I think that if you're gonna call him a racist because you're comparing him to people of the Democratic Party, then you can't call him a racist.
Yeah. And then people were saying because he built the wall and he's saying stuff about the Mexicans and saying like, oh, you're gonna pay for it.
Yeah.
And then like part of that stuff is just Trump's being a dummy. He's like kind of loud and charismatic with stuff. But even if you're gonna hold Trump with that race card, okay, then use that on Biden.
You have to hold this is where recently in the past year, this is where I was kind of like peace out politics because or like I can only get so frustrated, you know, with politics and the hypocrisy when I stopped listening to the media, and when I stopped listening, like the media has lost the American people, and rightly so, because all media lies. Like, honestly.
Like, if you haven't watched The Social Dilemma, watch it. And it talks about how, like, they feed you what you want. Like, if you look at a bunch of basketball stuff, you're going to get a bunch of basketball stuff. You look at a bunch of CNN stuff,
yeah, well, there's
you're going to see a lot of
CNN
stuff.
Algorithms
like,
and things like that.
All that stuff, yeah. But
Well, but no, sorry, really quickly, just the hypocrisy on both sides, is what has lost like people's trust in like the media and things like that.
Yeah.
And no one's gonna believe them anymore. No
Yeah.
one's gonna believe that you call so and so a racist. Like, well, here's 10 examples of them being the same exact way on your side. So what am I supposed to do? So then
Yeah.
I say peace out to all your standards, because you're not holding to the same. You're not being consistent. And if you're not going to be, it's the same thing with COVID. Like, I pieced out on COVID a long time ago with like they're like freaking out about it. I mean, COVID's real, okay, all these things. But just as an example of like the polarization of politics involving everything is like COVID, where on the East Coast they said, this is when I say goodbye. On the East Coast, they said, you can go to the beaches, you can go in the water, but you can't go on the beach. On the West Coast, they said, you can go to the beach, but you can't go in the water. I was like, get out, bye. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, no one knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing applies to politics, is that it's become so over-emotionalized, if that's even a word. It's become so hyper-emotional, so just like psychotic, because politics is people's god, because they expect politics to fix everything. Number one, America's only been around for like 250 years, hardly. Like, America's not gonna be around forever.
And then
so
just saying that, like,
that's like the problem, is that people make politics their god.
Yeah.
And he's not. It's not gonna fix your life. It's not going to.
People,
it's great.
People sort of feel like this is what's right, or people sort of like think this is what's right. And when you don't do your research and you don't look into stuff deeply, you're just gonna get what everybody else gets. Like, Google is corrupt. Like, you Google stuff and it's gonna send you stuff that's around your zip code kind of stuff. Like, you're gonna find what the people around you believe, like, really quick.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to like find a real source and find like stuff that's actually accurate, and fact check it.
But always coming at it with the foundation of the Bible.
Yeah.
And a Christian worldview.
Yeah.
If you're gonna call yourself a Christian, you have to look at everything through a Christian worldview.
Yeah.
And if you're not, that, again, no one does it perfectly. But you can't go around calling yourself a Christian and support blatantly not Christian things. And I mean, people could probably turn that and be like, okay, well then why do you support Trump? So, I mean, there's that, but I mean, looking at politics through a Christian worldview, the reason why I would vote for Trump is because of, again, the conservative values, and believing that after looking at it, I think that that's what these policies would be most good for our country. Good for the country, and us keeping like those Christian values, because again, in my strong opinion, the way that the left and the Democratic Party is going is so secular and so not biblical in a lot of ways. So that's why I would not. That's why I would vote for Trump, is because he's a conservative.
Yeah. And I think you have to, if you're gonna say something about one person, you have to hold that standard to both people, right? Like, that's obvious.
Yeah.
If you're gonna play the race card, then
it should be obvious.
Yeah, like,
but it's not.
You should also put it on Biden, because
And I mean, after this comes out, I don't know when it will, but it's probably, the election's gonna be over, and we'll look back at this and be like, oh my gosh, who won? Like, I don't know who's gonna win.
Yeah.
I hope it's Trump. Like, I'm gonna be honest, but for not reasons, not because I love the guy, but for like what his party, I guess, stands for, and how I see Christianity being able to work within seeing how Christianity can work in a world created by that party.
Yeah.
And like, again, the freedoms that are allowed. And I mean, we live in California, like, we've experienced like a very blue state.
Yeah.
And just the mandates that have been put on us with like COVID and things like that. It's just I'm not trying to be like conspiratory, but like, it's just like a taste of what the far left would bring. And I think that people are kidding themselves when they say that like socialism would be different in America. I don't think that it's
Communism.
Christians would be kidding themselves too, because if you look at all the history of socialist countries, like Christians are not welcome in those countries, and you can see it in California with the churches.
Yeah.
Like my church is open.
Newsom was trying to shut down the churches.
Yeah, and he still is. Like,
Yeah.
There's lots of churches that are not even open across the country, but especially in blue states. Like, like you look at that and you're like, do you really want that for the future? Like, yeah, the church is going to be persecuted, but like, do you want to make that come faster? Like, do you want to promote that? So, I mean, that's just a little bit of it, but
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's so much to say about that.
I mean, this is just scratching the surface.
Yeah, like
here, I have actually 2 resources for people.
Okay.
That give kind of both sides, I guess. Again, Voddie Bauchum, I can't hype him up enough. My man, love him. And so the John Piper article that I was talking about is called, which I guess I would disagree with. It's called Policies, Persons, and Paths to Ruin, Pondering the Implications of the 2020 Election. And again, 2020 election is going to be over by the time this, but and then there's a really good podcast called City of God podcast, and then another by Owen Strand, and then there's another man named Doug Wilson that is like a good theologian when it comes to Owen Strand and Doug Wilson are good theologians when it comes to like Christianity and politics. So go do your research before you decide on these things. You know, don't follow what the culture says about it.
Yeah.
Without
one thing I for sure would want to say is, because some people will go as far, and I think this is too much. I think this is overreaching, and I think they need to kind of check themselves. People will go as far as to say, if you vote Democratic, you're not a Christian. If you vote Republican, you're not a Christian. That's completely not true. Who you vote for does not determine whether you're saved or not. Like, God does that. Like,
we all make mistakes.
Oh my gosh, don't listen to that. And I don't think that like who you vote for should kind of separate like community in the church. Like if I were to vote for Biden, or if I were to vote for Trump and you were to vote for the opposing candidate, I wouldn't stop being your friend. Like, that should not be something, because I think that people have gotten to that point. Like, times have changed so much. Like, back like years ago, there was differences. People would vote Democratic, people would vote Republican, and would still be friends. And like this was like America, and people were so close in their beliefs, but would vote differently. And now it's like you have to be all here, all far right, or you have to be all far left. And then now there's like this division, and you can't be friends with people that disagree with you. You can't talk to people that disagree with you.
Yeah, which is the opposite of brotherly kindness.
Yeah,
you know,
it's so contrary to the gospel.
We would have a lot of really exciting conversations and a lot of really like heated conversations, but I mean, you're supposed to talk about
that's like
crazy stuff.
There should be a healthy way to discuss about these things and talk about them. So that's why I wanted you to come on and have this talk. Last thing we'll talk about, and we'll kind of wrap it up after this, is feminism, right? Because that's also kind of associated with Democrats and liberals. And if you're conservative, if you're a Christian, and if you're Republican, then you're white, male, you're superior to everybody, and you can't, that's not true. I'm not a feminist. I definitely don't think that women are superior to men, but I also don't think that men are superior to women. I think God created them and has different roles for them. And if you go as far, because feminism has changed over the years, and I think at first, and there's like waves of feminism, the first wave, second wave, third wave.
There's like 4 now, yeah.
Yeah, and we're supposed to be in this 4th wave from 2010 to now. But feminism has changed through time. It started in the 1900s, and I think they had the right intentions at first. They didn't have rights, they didn't have things. Now it's kind of shifted, and it's become like it's all about my right, my choice, my body, my choice, and all this, and it gets really toxic. What do you think with gospel? Is feminism aligned with what the gospel preaches. Can someone be a Christian and be a feminist? And even maybe if you want to, we've talked about this already. Do you think Jesus was a feminist? And yeah.
Yeah. My favorite. No, I'm kidding. One of my favorite subjects. Yeah. So there's 4 waves of feminism. Really quick resource again. So Sheologians has a really good podcast. Well, their podcast is Sheologians, but they have a 4-part series on feminism. It's called Feminism is Poison. So don't be turned off by the. Obviously, you can see their bias. But it's a really good look at like the history of feminism. So I'm not even going to go into that because it's just like that would take. I mean, it took them 4 podcasts, so which are like an hour long each. Does Christianity align with modern day feminism? No, I don't think it does, and I don't think that I would have a really hard time being convinced by an argument that says that it does, because again, you have to look at what the Bible says about people. What does the Bible say about people? The Bible says that people are sinful, but the Bible says people are made in the image of God. And then in Genesis, it talks about the roles, or like how God made men and women. And then throughout the Bible, it talks about the roles of men and women. So I don't think that, especially modern day feminism, probably even, I mean, some aspects of the first wave of feminism were not good. Obviously, women should vote. Obviously, the good things that have come out of feminism, I say quotes because it's arguable. It's arguable, like, what are the good things? Because people will say, oh, it's this, blah, blah, blah. But I think voting, like women's suffrage, equal pay, things like that. Just really quick, the argument for women and men nowadays not being paid equally is false. And, like, it's been debunked so many times by, like, not even Christians or not even conservatives. Like, it's been debunked so many times by... Just, it's been debunked. And if you still hold to the thought that women and men are paid, like, I think it's 70 cents to the dollar that women are paid to men, it's a false statistic. And it's just like honestly, for me, it's kind of like a irrelevant talking point, because you go off life choices and all these things. But in terms of Christianity and feminism, the important aspects, God defines who women are, not culture. And our identity comes from how God defines us, so in a non-super heated way about talking about feminism, to say that, I mean, not even with the idea of abortion, because I don't think that that's even arguable for Christians. I think that, I mean, of course, there's nuances with, like, I'm not even getting into vaccines and things like that, but I could talk about so many things, but I don't think that it's arguable that women marching in the streets for my body, my choice, it's not, first of all, God made your body and God created that life, so it's not your choice to kill it. Like, I don't know, the abortion argument is very black and white. I don't think that that's something that you can argue about as a Christian. But human dignity comes from God, and women's dignity comes from God. And it's almost solely defined by God throughout history. And so this is where it was Jesus a feminist. I would not call Jesus a feminist. That's a really bad, like, way to put it. We shouldn't go around saying Jesus was a feminist. I'm not going to go around. I'm not a feminist. The reason why I say I'm not a feminist is because of the way that feminism is defined nowadays is, like, toxic, to use like an easy word. Like, it's toxic, and it doesn't, I don't want people to assume my beliefs. Of course I'm for women's dignity. Of course, again, I'm for women's rights, women's non-rights. That's, like, again, it's sketchy. Like, you have to define terms when you talk about these things. And be, like, really careful.
What is a right? What is this? What is
what is women's right? Women's right to choose is like, no, that's not what I believe. Like, so when you call yourself, so for Christian girls, I would, like, caution them in saying, like, oh, I'm a feminist. Like, of course, like, women, like, of course, like,
women power.
Yeah. It's like, oh gosh. Woo. No one has, like, power, like, it's not. It's like Christ power. Anyways, no, I don't think that Christian women should call themselves feminisms because of the implications that that word brings with it. Again, God gives you your dignity. Christ gives women dignity. And again, with the example of the woman at the well, like, you just have to look in the Bible and how God treats women throughout all of the Bible. Despite like Jewish culture, like Eve is called the mother of all living. Like, that's her name. Like, what an honor, to be the mother of all living. And I think that God gives women like a very high value, like in the Proverbs. I mean, not even Proverbs 31, but even like the way women are described in the Bible is the way that we should describe women, and the standard that we should hold women to is the standard that the Bible holds them to. So yeah, again, you have to look at these issues from like a Christian worldview. Like, what does the Bible say about women?
Yeah.
And that's what we should be promoting.
I think it even rubs, because I've asked, and I think it even rubs people the wrong way when women read, you have to be submissive.
Oh.
Now it's like, oh, I have to be, why doesn't the man be submissive? Like, it can get so deep.
Yeah.
Read your Bible and you'll know what submissive is trying to say. And somebody said this, a pastor, and I would agree to this. It says how women have to be submissive, but it says men are to love their wives as Christ loved the church.
It's like right after each other.
Yeah, and it's to the point where, like, how do you love the church so much? What did Jesus do? He died. So men, in other words, you have to be willing to die for your wife. So who has the greater like sacrifice here? And so it's like, are you really the one that's really being submissive?
What are you trying to say? I'm just kidding.
Oh man.
No, and I think on that, sorry to interrupt you, but on terms of that, before I lose my train of thought, I think I've explained this maybe to you before and just to people in general, but like, all people are called to be, men and women are called to be submissive. To the church, to God. Not the church, well, the church and each other. Like, I'm supposed to submit to all of my brothers and sisters and all of the church because it's like sacrificial love. So I think that women take the term like being a submissive wife or a submissive whatever, and they just like pull it out of context and like, oh my gosh, like how dare God say I have to be like that. Well, no. If you read the entire Bible, like, you have to submit to everyone. Yeah. Christ submitted to the Father and came down and died for us, like like you're talking about, and then so it's not as offensive as a term as people realize. And if you're offended by it, it's probably because you either
it's pride.
One of it is pride. The second one, it's pride. Two, it's how culture has defined submitting.
It's got a negative connotation to
exactly.
Like, to the point where like men, we don't submit to anybody. Like, all we submit to is God. Like, we're not gonna listen to anyone. Like, that's wrong too. Like, Jesus washes his disciples' feet. Like, he's on the floor. How submissive is that? If Jesus, the Savior of the world, does that, how much more are we supposed to do that? And so I think that's just a negative connotation that society puts on it, and everybody that's another problem. People take their opinion of what the Bible has to say and say, oh, this is what it means, when that's obviously not what it's talking about. Obviously, but I think that, do you have any last comments?
In terms of like, people often say like, God hates women or something like that's like not a talking point, but like an argument, like a simplified version of the argument, like, God actually doesn't like women because of like women can't be pastors, and we're not even going to get into that because it's long. Just look some stuff up. But if you look, one example of the value that the Bible gives women is, who were the first people to see Jesus resurrected? It was women. And back in that culture, women's like testimony was not valid. Yep. But it was in that sense, and so
Ooh, come on. Yeah, we can go so deep with this stuff. We've talked about a lot of this
to scratch
stuff.
the surface.
Yeah, this is just
feminism does not align with biblical principles. Nope. Don't believe the lies.
Yeah.
Believe biblical feminism. If you're gonna use the word feminism, look at the way that God values. Look at the way that God gives humans dignity. That God gives women dignity. That God gives women value. Yeah. How they're made in the image of God, and the roles that God set up for men and women, both, the roles that he set up the way that God set up the world, how it's supposed to be without sin, which is what we're trying to strive for, you know, as the church, as people of God. Even if we think like, oh, I don't know about that, it's the best way. Like the way that God set up the roles for men and women. If God set it up, it's gonna be the proper way.
Yeah.
And that's my view on it.
And it's so problematic because what people try to do is you're trying to put worldly things into like heavenly things. Like you're trying to put philosophy, we're trying to put like all these ideas that are man-made and put them like, this is what God is. Like, no.
Mm-hmm.
Like God is above all that. Like God isn't white, God isn't black, God isn't this or that. Like
God's
God
not a
is
man,
God.
God's not a woman.
Nope. God is God, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. You don't say that this is that. No, like that's not how it works.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Sorry, really quick. Like because these are cultural issues of our time.
Mm-hmm.
Politics,
The
feminism,
media, feminism.
you know, all these things are
COVID.
problems of our time. But the Bible is like timeless.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's been around for a long. God's word has been around since the very beginning. He spoke things into existence. Yeah. So like the reason why I keep saying you have to go to the Bible, you have to look through a biblical worldview, is because if you really call yourself a Christian, you really say the Bible is truth and the Bible has no errors. It's with all the changing things in all the worlds forever throughout time, it's the only thing that's unchanging.
Yeah.
God is unchanging. So you really have nothing else to go to.
Yeah.
It's the simple explanation of like building your house on the rock.
Yeah.
It's the rock. It's God. It's the Bible. Like it's the truth. Like if you're gonna build your house on sand, it's gonna crumble. So as Christians of this day and age, don't build yourself a house of politics on the sand of politics, on the sand of fill in the blank worldly cultural thing. Like build your house, build your life on the rock.
Amen. Couldn't have ended it any better than that. Oh, man, you gave me something to think about. Well, yeah, thank you for coming on. I'm going to go ahead and put your Instagram on the bio. Fine. So if you guys have questions, you guys want to talk to Sarah about these things, she's got so much more to say. We've had so many good discussions and healthy conversations. Like it's never been like, you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong. Like it's not even about that. Like it's just like looking into what God has to say. And so if you guys want to learn more and talk to Sarah, you can just feel free to message her. She may or may not reply to you.
I'll send you my church's website. You can go watch some sermons.
Yeah. So.
Or I'll just DM you resources. Like, oh, this is where I learned everything.
Yeah. So.
No. I would love to talk to people, and my views are. I mean, I'm 22 and I've come this far. I can't imagine like what I'm going to learn and how my views are going to change in the next however long God has for me. Mm-hmm. It's a continual sanctification process. So, and I think that, I don't know who said it, but someone said, my pastor would know, but because he said it before, that our theology is like only at best 80% accurate. Uh-huh. So yeah, as Christians, we're not supposed to pit ourselves against each other. We should have healthy, strong conversations about these issues, but it's not life or death, and we should do them in a loving way, in a God-honoring way, because it doesn't honor God to like fight with each other or hate each other. Yeah.
All right, so there you guys have it. You can also just reach out to me, and then we can have some conversations. We'll go from there. Thank you guys for watching.
Okay. Nice.
Ooh, good job.
Thanks. Got a little spicy at the end there.
That was fun. How long was that?
43 minutes.
Oh my God.
If you're not wifed up, somebody's got to wife you up. You're loyal. You're a real one. 2 hours? You watch 2 hours? I would have watched the 2 hours. I'm just kidding. Thank you guys for watching. Blessings.